Welcome to HFY Beyond Terra, where humanity doesn't just survive, it becomes the galaxy's biggest surprise. Subscribe, and let's go beyond Terra.
The snow on Varda 9 didn't fall like it did in the vids. On the training sims, flakes drifted prettily, glittering in the beam of a helmet lamp. In real life, it came sideways, hard, needle-thin shards driven by wind that screamed across the ice plain like it was trying to peel the skin off the world. Lieutenant Jace Mora didn't have the luxury of pretty. He lay belly down behind the broken ridge of a pressure hummock, breath rasping loud inside his mask, counting the seconds between the sweeps of a patrol drone's searchlight. Above him, the sky was a lid of storm gray. Below him, the planet's surface shifted and moaned, glacial plates grinding under pressure. Behind his shoulder, something moved, not the drone, not the wind, a small sound, half cough, half whimper, thin as a wire about to snap. Jace froze for a different reason. He twisted, slow, careful. His glove brushed a shape pressed into the shadowed trough of the hummock. A figure curled tight, shivering so hard her joints clicked. Frost clung to her lashes like powdered glass. Her clothing, thin, pale fabric, was torn in several places, offering the wind entry like open doors. Alien, not one of the Dominion troops hunting him, smaller, finer-limbed, and very, very alive. Her eyes opened, glossy and too large, reflecting the faint green glow of his suit's readouts. She stared at him with the sharp panic of a cornered animal, then her gaze snagged on the red emblem on his shoulder. The Terran Union rescue insignia, a simple circle in hand, her mouth opened. No sound came out at first. Then with a trembling effort, she shaped words in halting trade. "Please, I'm freezing," Jace swallowed. His mission clock screamed in his head, "Don't compromise, don't take risks. Get to the extraction beacon." But the storm had erased his beacon. The Dominion had shot down his comms relay, and the enemy drone overhead was slow sweeping closer with every pass. He looked at the alien again. She was going blue around the lips, if lips was the right term. Her skin had a faint opalescent sheen like pearl under moonlight. She was shaking so violently her teeth chattered in a pattern that made his own jaw ache. She wasn't going to last another hour out here, and there was a difference between risk and refusal. Jace raised one finger to his mask, a silent quiet. Then he pointed upward. The drone's light swept past, missing them by meters, her pupils dilated. Fear made her inhale sharply. "SHH," he breathed, and without thinking too hard, he reached. His gloved hand grabbed the collar of her torn outer layer. He pulled her down into the trough with him, pressing her against the ice-shadowed wall. Her body was shockingly cold through the fabric, like touching a metal railing in winter. She made a small sound that might have been gratitude or pain, and then she tried to curl even tighter to shrink into herself. The drone's beam passed overhead again, bright, searching. Jace didn't move until the light faded, then he leaned close enough that his visor almost touched her forehead. "What's your name?" he whispered. She blinked slowly, trying to focus. "Illyra." "Okay, Illyra." He kept his voice low and steady. "Can you walk?" Her gaze flicked to his boots, to the bulk of his suit. And to his hands, like she was deciding whether he was real. I can," she said, but the way she tried to shift told the truth. Her muscles weren't responding. Jace sighed through his nose. "Right, of course." He checked his suit, battery at 68, heat exchange stable, emergency thermal blanket still sealed at his hip, one flare, 2 ration packs, a micro cutter, a spool of smart fiber cord. He looked at Illyra again. She was shaking less now, not because she was warming, but because her body was losing the strength to keep shivering. Hypothermia, he thought, fast. The drone's engine buzzed as it turned downwind. Jace made the decision. He peeled open the thermal blanket and unfolded it with painstaking care. It was silver, crinkling too loud in the storm's brief lull, but he timed it between gusts. Then he wrapped it around Illyra's shoulders. She flinched, startled by the reflective sheen. Her fingers, long, delicate, almost translucent, clutched at the blanket's edge like it might fly away. Stay under that, Jace murmured. It'll buy time. Her gaze softened barely. You are Terran? Yeah. The Dominion, her voice cracked. They took us from the caravan. They said we were units. Jace's throat tightened. He'd seen the Dominion's units. He'd pulled survivors out of cages with wrists raw from restraints. How did you get away? He asked. Alira's eyes shimmered. I fell. Into a fissure. They didn't look. A crack sounded somewhere distant, ice shifting. Jace glanced across the plain, white nothingness. The wind erased any tracks. No one comes back for the fallen, she said like it was a law. Jace's jaw set. Terrans do. He didn't mean it as a slogan. It came out like a promise he couldn't stop his mouth from making. Another sweep of light, closer. Jace swore silently. We're moving, he whispered. He slid his arm under Alira's shoulders. The moment he lifted her, her whole body stiffened. Then she made a small, broken sound and clung to his forearm with startling strength. Her fingers dug into the polymer plating of his suit as if she decided the only solid thing in the universe was him. Jace paused. Alira, I need you to hold still, okay? You can hold on, but don't. I must, she breathed, eyes wide. If I let go, hey, he said, gentler, you're not falling, not again. He moved anyway, half dragging, half carrying her along the shadow of the hummock ridge. The drone hovered, searchlight cutting through the storm in intermittent slices. Jace kept low, using every chunk of ice and rise in terrain as cover. His suit's compass sputtered. The magnetic field here was a mess, but he had something better than a compass. He had experience, wind direction, snow drift patterns. The way the storm thickened toward the northwest. The faint smell of metallic ozone that meant open fissures nearby. He angled toward a jagged line in the ground, a split seam where the ice plates had pulled apart. If he could get them down into the crack, the drone's light might miss them entirely. Alira's grip tightened. You're warm, she whispered, astonished, as if she'd never expected warmth to exist again. I'm insulated, he muttered, and stubborn. Her eyes flicked to his chest plate where his suit radiated faint heat. You are like a fire walking. Don't romanticize it, he said automatically, then regretted how sharp it sounded. But Alira didn't seem offended. She just looked at him as if the concept of sharply spoken words had no weight compared to the simple fact that he had not left her behind. They reached the fissure. It was narrow at first, then widened into a deeper crack, lined with blue ice that caught his headlamp and threw it back in eerie halos. Jace lowered Alira carefully, then climbed down after her. The air inside the fissure was still less violent. Cold, yes, but not the knifing wind. He sealed his suit's external vents and pulled the thermal blanket tighter around her. Then with his micro cutter, he sliced a strip of smart fiber cord and fashioned it into a makeshift tether. What are you doing? Alira asked, voice thin. Making sure you don't slip deeper if you pass out, he said. He looped the cord around a protruding ice knob and tied the other end loosely around her waist. Her eyes fixed on the cord, then on him. Tethering? Yeah, she swallowed. That is a bond, Jace blinked. A what? Alira's gaze slid away, embarrassed or frightened. In my clan, the tether is the promise. When storm takes you, another holds you. It means you belong in their keeping. Jace's stomach dipped. He hadn't known. He'd done what he always did. Secure the vulnerable, reduce risk. He opened his mouth to explain, and Alira reached out, fingers trembling, and touched the back of his glove as if confirming he was real. Thank you, she whispered, and the words held a weight that made Jace suddenly, painfully aware of the difference between help and commitment. Before he could respond, the drone's engine buzzed overhead again, muffled by ice. Jace cursed softly. Stay quiet, it's still looking. Alira nodded, but she didn't loosen her hold on his sleeve. If anything, she pressed closer, as if his body was the only barrier between her and the world's teeth. Minutes crawled. The storm outside roared. The drone made another pass, then another, then drifted away, likely to conserve power or report failure. Jace exhaled slowly. He checked his wrist console. Still no comms, no beacon lock. The Dominion had jammed the band hard. He looked down the fissure. It sloped deeper, a narrow tunnel where the ice glowed faintly from trapped minerals. Shelter, yes. But also a trap if the plates shifted. And Alira's shivering had slowed to a dangerous lull. He lowered himself beside her, knees pulled up, and unsealed his suit's emergency heating pad. It was meant for him if the suit failed. He pressed it carefully against the blanket near her core. Warmth goes to the center first, he said, half to himself. You stay awake. Alira's eyes fluttered. I want to sleep. I know, he leaned closer. Don't. She looked at him through a haze. You will leave when storm clears. That's the plan, he said, but not without you, her brow creased. Why? Jace stared at the ice wall. Because it was right. Because his mother had taught him that you didn't step over someone to save yourself. Because the Union's code wasn't just ink on paper, but also because he'd seen what happened when people started deciding who was worth saving. Because you're a person, he said simply. Alira's throat bobbed. The Dominion said we were cargo. The Dominion's full of it. A faint sound echoed down the fissure. Jace's head snapped up, not the drone, footsteps, crunching snow above, voices distorted by wind but unmistakably close. Dominion patrol. Jace's blood went cold. He pulled his pistol free, thumbed the power level down. Energy weapons lit up like a flare on some sensors, but low output might pass as background. Alira noticed his tension. Her hand tightened on his sleeve, and in her eyes he saw terror sharpen into something else, something like resolve. They will take me back, she whispered. Not if I have anything to say about it, Jace whispered back. The voices grew louder, a harsh bark in Dominion standard. A metallic clank as someone tapped the ground, search poles maybe, probing for fissures. Jace's mind raced. If they dropped into the crack, he could fight, but outnumbered in close quarters, it would be messy, and Alira would be caught in the crossfire. He needed a distraction or a misdirection. His gaze flicked to the fissure wall. Blue ice, smooth, reflective, an idea sparked. Jace dug into his kit and pulled out his last flare. He stripped the casing with the micro cutter, exposing the ignition strip, then wedged it into a narrow side split in the ice 10 meters down the fissure where it angled up toward the surface. He looked at Alira. Cover your eyes when it goes, she blinked, confused. What? Trust me, he triggered it. The flare ignited with a violent hiss, bright white light blasting up the side split like a spear. Above them, the fissure mouth flashed with a sudden bloom, like someone had opened a door to a furnace. The patrol voices snapped into alarm. Their heat signature, boots pounded. Figures rushed past the fissure mouth, chasing the false survivor signal upwind. Jace listened until their footsteps faded, then he exhaled and leaned his forehead against the ice. Alira stared at him like he'd performed sorcery. You made fire from nothing. Jace gave a humorless smile. Not nothing from desperation. She reached up with trembling fingers and touched his helmet visor, tracing the curve like it was sacred. Human, she whispered. Your kind you do not simply endure, you invent endurance. He huffed softly. That's one way to put it. The flare would burn out in minutes. The patrol might realize the trick and return. Jace had to move and fast. He checked his wrist console again and caught a faint flicker on the comm display. Not a full signal, but a pulse, brief, rhythmic, a rescue ping. His heart jumped. Come on, he murmured. He boosted his suit's antenna, angled it, and caught the pulse again. Someone was broadcasting on a tight beam channel. Union. Jace tapped back a code burst, praying it wasn't too late. Static, then barely audible through the hiss. Mora, Jace. Mora, respond. Jace almost laughed in relief. This is Mora, he whispered, voice rough. I'm alive. I have a civilian with me. Repeat, civilian. A pause, then copy coordinates. Jace glanced at his map. Still messy, but now the pulse gave him a bearing. He sent an estimated position, adding the fissure's geologic marker. Extraction inbound, the voice said. 10 minutes. Stay concealed. 10 minutes. On Varda 9, 10 minutes could be a lifetime. Jace looked at Alira. Help's coming. Her eyes widened. For you. For us, he corrected. Alira's lips parted, something like hope flickered, and then fear strangled it. They will see me, she whispered. They will ask why you carry me. They will think, she faltered. In my clan, the tether, the blanket, the shared warmth, it is not done unless you mean to keep. Jace's chest tightened again. He'd been afraid of this. He moved carefully, slow enough not to spook her, and unsealed his helmet. Cold air bit his face instantly, but he needed his voice unfiltered, needed her to see his expression. Alira, he said softly, I didn't know about your customs. I wasn't trying to claim you. Her gaze darted between his eyes, searching for deception. Then why do you let me hold you? Jace swallowed. Because you're freezing, because you're scared, and because I'd rather you hold on than give up. Alira's throat trembled. If you do not mean to keep me, then when you leave, the storm will take me anyway, not the cold, the alone. The words hit harder than any weapon. Jace stared at her, really stared at the bruises on her wrists, the frost burn on her cheek, the way her entire body leaned toward him like gravity. He realized something then. This wasn't only about cultural bonding. This was trauma. This was a person whose world had taught her that letting go meant death and whose body was now physically wiring that lesson into her bones. He put his bare hand, gloveless, reckless, over hers. You're not alone, he said, not now and not after. I can't promise you what your clan would call a bond, but I can promise this: I won't abandon you. Alira's eyes filled. A tear slipped down, freezing halfway. She made a small sound, almost a laugh, almost a sob, and then she did something that startled him. She pressed her forehead against his chest plate, right over where his heart thudded, as if listening, as if anchoring. I hear it, she murmured. Hear what? The drum inside you, she whispered. It does not slow in fear. It does not retreat. Jace let out a shaky breath. It retreats plenty. It just complains while moving forward. A distant thump reverberated through the ice, heavy, rhythmic, not the storm, engines, Union dropship cutting through the wind. Jace sealed his helmet again and checked the fissure mouth. Snow swirled like smoke. The world above was chaos. He activated his suit beacon for a single second, just enough for the dropship's sensors to lock, then killed it again. A shadow passed overhead. A search beam, but this time Union blue, scanning with care instead of hunger. A rope ladder dropped, swinging slightly. Jace looked at Alira. Okay, we go up. Can you climb? Alira stared at the ladder as if it were an impossible miracle. Her hands flexed, uncertain. Jace nodded toward the tether. We'll keep you attached to me, not for customs, for safety. Alira hesitated, then she nodded, a slow acceptance. Safety, she echoed, and her fingers tightened around his sleeve anyway. They climbed. Jace went first, bracing himself, anchoring his boots against the ice. Alira followed, clinging close, her movements shaky but determined. Wind hammered them the moment their heads cleared the fissure. The dropship hovered like a dark whale above, its hatch open, crew silhouettes visible inside. A Union crewman leaned out, arm extended. Mara, grab on. Jace hauled Alira up the last rung, then pushed her toward the waiting arms. The crewman caught her, and Alira's panic detonated. As she screamed, a sharp, piercing sound, and flailed, trying to twist back toward Jace. Her fingers slipped on the crewman's sleeve, then latched onto Jace's suit with desperate strength. No, she cried in trade. Do not take me from him. The crewman blinked, startled. Sir, Jace's stomach sank. Of course, the moment a stranger touched her, her body screamed loss. Jace grabbed Alira's wrists gently but firmly. Alira, look at me. Her eyes were wild. They will separate. They will, they won't, Jace said, voice steady. This is my people. They're here to help. Alira shook her head violently. Your people will not want me. Jace's jaw tightened. He looked up at the crewman, then at the pilot inside, and he made his voice carry. She's a civilian, he said. She's coming with us. The pilot's face appeared in the hatch light, Captain Rio's older, scar across one brow. He took one look at Alira's condition and nodded once. Get them both in, Rio snapped. The crewman changed grip, careful now, and Jace climbed into the hatch with Alira still glued to his side like a living shadow. Inside the dropship, warmth hit like a wave. Alira gasped, overwhelmed. Her knees buckled. Jace caught her instinctively and she clung harder, burying her face against his arm. A medic rushed forward. Hypothermia, frost burn, she needs, Alira hissed, recoiling from the medic's hands. Jace lifted a palm. Easy, she's scared. Rio stepped closer, gaze sharp. Lieutenant, debrief later. Right now we get off this rock before Dominion realizes we're here. The dropship lurched as it climbed. The storm roared outside, but inside the hum of engines was steady, protective. Alira slowly lifted her head. Her eyes met Jace's visor. You did not leave, she whispered. No, he said. I told you. Her fingers loosened just a fraction, enough for Jace to breathe. Then she surprised him again. As she reached for the smart fiber tether still around her waist, followed it to where it was looped around his harness and touched the knot. In my clan, she said, voice still shaking, the tether is a promise. Jace's chest tightened. He crouched so he was level with her and he spoke carefully. I can't be your clan, he said. I can't replace what was taken from you, but I can promise you this, as long as you want help, you will have it. Food, shelter, safety, choice. No one owns you. Alira stared as if choice was a foreign concept. Then her shoulders sagged, not in defeat, something like release. I do not know what to do with a promise like that, she admitted. Jace gave a small, tired smile. Start by not freezing to death. A tiny sound escaped her, almost laughter. The medic approached again, slower this time, palms open. May I treat you? She asked in careful trade. Alira's gaze flicked to Jace. He nodded once. Alira swallowed, then nodded too. Yes, she whispered. But he stays. The medic glanced at Jace. He can stay. Jace sat beside Alira as the medic wrapped warming pads around her core and checked her vitals. Alira trembled, but she didn't fight. Her eyes stayed on Jace as if he were a lighthouse and she was still learning that the sea didn't have to swallow her. As the dropship broke through the storm's upper layer, pale sunlight spilled into the cabin, thin, watery, but real. Alira blinked at it like she'd forgotten light could be gentle. Jace watched her and something settled in his chest, an understanding both heavy and clear. On Varda 9, he'd pulled her down to hide her. But now in the warmth of the ship, he realized the truth. He hadn't just saved her from the cold. He'd become the first proof she'd seen in a long time that the universe still contained hands that reached toward instead of for. Alira's fingers found his sleeve again, not crushing now, not desperate, just there. A human grip would have been a handshake. But for her, it was something simpler and harder earned, a decision. I will learn your word, she murmured. My word, she nodded, eyelids heavy. The one you said, person, Jace swallowed. Yeah, he said softly, you are. Alira exhaled, and for the first time since he'd found her, her shoulders truly relaxed. She didn't let him go, but it wasn't a chain. It was a choice, and that Jace thought was the most human thing of all.